past and the opportunities for renewed engagement in the future. When I was here last, it was as the incoming chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on Africa. At that time, I committed to make an aggressive effort in my capacity to bring real peace and stability in Somalia. I renew that commitment to you today and ask you to do the same. As we've learned in Afghanistan, we cannot ignore the conditions that breed and empower terrorist organizations, and we cannot address them on the cheap. Our national security, the fate of Somalia's people, and the region's stability demand nothing less. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Senator Feingold, for being here today on what I know is a very busy day for you, for your enduring commitment on Somalia, even when it's not being in the headlines in the U.S. press, and for the challenge I think that you put before us today. And I hope during the course of the day we can kind of delve down into some of those strategies that you lay out and talk about what that might look like in being implemented. The Senator has agreed to take some questions. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to urge people to keep their questions very brief. We have about 10 minutes for that. So perhaps we'll take a couple at a time, or Tony Carroll.
Thank you, Senator.
A mic is coming, and if you...
Manchester Trade, I've got a mic, thank you. Senator, no country in the world depends more on the remittances of its people abroad than Somalia. Yet in this country, remittances to Somalia are greatly endangered by failure to reform banking law, which very much restricts money transfers. Last year, there was a Money Services Act of 2007 that passed through the House, but didn't get sponsorship on the Senate. There's efforts again. Senator Falk, Congressman Bach, as Congresswoman Maloney have indicated their interest in reintroducing this legislation, yet the Senate seems to lack a sponsor in this regard. Have you taken an interest or would support such legislation?
I've not had a chance to look at this issue, but I will immediately. When I was in Djibouti, I had an excellent meeting with a group of Somali business people who, of course, articulated the connection between the United States and the communities here and there, and of course we have to deal with any difficulties or dangers concerning this, but this is an important part of the future of our relationship, and I will immediately take a look at that, and let's get back to him as well. Do you want me to call him, Pete?
My name is Rosemary Segero. I'm from Kenya. Senator, I'm so grateful to see you here, and I know through your leadership, I've known Somali since I was a young girl, and Somali are the hardest working people in Africa. They are, and they are business people. What I would like to say is protect, have a policy on women, children, the sufferers, children, women, and young people to get out of crime, to go to school and get businesses. So please, I know you're going to do this, and I know Somali, from this day, we have to go to Somali and bring peace to Somali, not only here. So thank you so much coming, and extend my thanks and greetings to President Obama, and tell them to protect Somali and the rest of Africa. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your comment. And the fact that you are Kenyan, highlights the regional nature of this, the presence of Somali refugees in Kenya, the effect that sometimes these raids that the United States has been involved in has on the attitudes of people in Kenya, particularly Muslims and in particular Somalis in Kenya. This is all interconnected and puts a pressure on the entire region. And I appreciate your expression of concern for the future of Somalia itself, but the fact is it affects the entire region if we do not do a good job on this.
My name is Abdi Samatar. I'm actually an old Wisconsinite. Long before you became, I came to La Crosse, and I know family friends of yours in La Crosse. And then there were few votes before 1991.
All right, well, I hope I did well with them.
You certainly had mine. I have two very quick questions. One is, the gentleman here talked about remittance and money that belonged to one of the money transfers were inbounded shortly after 9/11. And that money, although the Treasury has demonstrated that there were no criminality involved in this company, Al-Barakat it was called, that money is still being held, and I'm wondering what's going to happen to that, because it's ordinary people's money. That's the first one. The second one is, now everybody talks about tired old ideas of the old regime, so to speak, here in the United States. I hope in your attempt to help Somalis and help our country, that old ideas about explanations of what the problem in Somalia are not sustained anymore, because they have not delivered and they will not deliver. Thank you very much.
Well, of course, I'll just agree with the second point. And, as to financial transactions, let's first all concede that we have a legitimate right as a country to investigate financial transactions if we think they're going to lead to promotion or financing of terrorists. And I'll continue to believe that. But that doesn't mean laws have to be foolishly written or inappropriately or excessively enforced. And so I cannot answer specifically about that money, but we will try to get back to you. And I recognize this has been a problem within a lot of places in the world, but Somalia is one of them. Oh, I'll let you.
Ambassador Abdallah, I think
That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for your visit in December. In half a day, you met many people and you left an impact. I fully endorse what you have been saying. I'm very happy to have been working with career diplomat, American career diplomat, who are patient, who know the files, who don't get, mismanaged or misled by some of our Somali friends. What I see now as really an urgent matter is that Somalia is a threat, has been a threat to its people, threats to the region, a threat to a country like yours with the development of tourism. What happened in Hargeisa, it was the first American-born Somali who blew up himself. We cannot neglect that. We have a legal and legitimate government. To me, the priority, how to support this government to help it deliver. If we try to overload them before strengthening them, we go back to square zero, where every exercise is destroyed by a second exercise and another exercise. Somalis, some of them likes it, expert like it. I think time has come. We have a legitimate government, a legal government, how to help him deliver. Thank you.
And let me take the ambassador's remarks here and just illustrate it with the experience I had with meeting with Sheikh Sharif. For years, the Islamic courts were characterized in a way that may have had some validity, but we were essentially led to believe by the political rhetoric in this country that this was an arm of al-Qaeda, the Islamic courts in general. Now, I'm sure there were people in the Islamic courts that are people I'd never want to deal with, and may, in fact, people that are our enemies. But there were other people. And one example is Sheikh Sharif. And I sat down and I met with him in the ambassador's residence in Djibouti, and I met a very diplomatic person who appeared devoted to his country. Now, I'm not going to vouch for him for the future. Maybe he'll turn out to be somebody that we don't like. Maybe he'll turn out to be somebody that had a different agenda, but he didn't appear to be that way. And yet he was somebody that probably would have been categorized in an extremely negative way, to the point where it would have been questionable for anybody like me to even meet with him a few years ago. Well, he's now the president. The ambassador is identifying him as a leader of a government for which there is hope. That is an important lesson for America as we deal with issues around the world, and particularly in Islamic countries. Somalia does not have an extremist tradition in terms of religion. It has a very moderate tradition. And that is something that we Americans need to know before we start making assumptions about a place or about the people that we might deal with. This gentleman straight back here will be the last one.
Leadership on these issues, it's been quite important. When you were here last in 2007 at CSIS, you called for the creation of an international trust fund for Somalia, which I thought was a very good idea. Principally to get the resources in place up front, to provide incentive, benchmarks would obviously lead to the release of the funds. Is this something that you still think is a good idea?
I do, and I am hoping that as a part of the Obama administration's review of this, that this is something that they can take a position on and urge as a part of their review. But I do not want to get ahead of what they're going to come up with on that. But it is something I still think we ought to do. Thank you very much, and I wish you well with your proceedings today.